Ciaccona is the newest Aero Resonator in Wuthering Waves, featuring a strong and versatile kit. She uses a pistol, provides powerful team-wide buffs, and is the second Resonator to utilize the Aero Erosion mechanic. Truthfully, her gameplay does stand out with a unique semi-on-field, semi-off-field playstyle, and this offers one of the most interesting experiences in the game so far. In today's video though, we'll be going over her kit, weapon options, and team composition to help you decide if she's worth pulling, but without further ado, let's get into it. Before we break down Ciaccona though, we first need to understand how Aero Erosion works. Aero Erosion is one of the newest elemental mechanics introduced to Wuthering Waves, but to simplify what's important about this mechanic, Aero Erosion is a dot debuff. It can be stacked, and the more stacks than an enemy has, the more damage it will deal. This means you want to apply as many stacks as possible on the enemy if you want to deal more damage, and fortunately this is something that Ciaccona can achieve and do pretty easily during her rotation. Now that we have the basics though, let's get into her kit. Ciaccona revolves around her solo concert mechanic, and after her fourth basic attack, she activates said mechanic, providing nearby resonators 24% arrow damage. Solo concert can be cancelled by performing any action, and afterwards she will leave behind an ensemble sylph. This is a copy of herself that she can create with her normal attack and resonance skill, and up to 2 sylphs can exist at the same time on the field, with each providing nearby resonators 24% arrow damage. Ciaccona's normal attack, quadruple time steps, has some unique properties worth highlighting. First, she has a 4-hit combo that deals arrow damage, and second, on the 4th basic attack, she enters a state called Solo Concert. Now, as previously mentioned, this can be cancelled by performing any other action, and cancelling this will leave behind an ensemble sylph, which boosts nearby resonators arrow damage by 24%. Finally though, on the 4th hit of this attack, she does apply 1 stack of Aero Erosion, and it's also worth noting here that her combo won't be interrupted if you dodge and quickly resume attacking, so this makes her combat flow overall feel much more consistent. As for her heavy attack, holding down her normal attack will enter A mode, similar to Morteffi's, and when her forte bar is full, this heavy attack changes into an AoE strike that pulls enemies in and applies 1 stack of Aero Erosion. Her resonant skill, Harmonic Allegro, will allow Ciaccona to dash forward, dealing arrow damage, but this also generates an ensemble sylph and applies 1 stack of erosion if you hit an enemy. Additionally, this skill will allow you to start her normal attack combo on her 2nd basic, and this is important as it lets you generate another sylph much faster. As for her Resonance Liberation, known as Singer's Triple Cadenza, this ability description is quite long, so let's break this down piece by piece. First, both Ciaccona and her sylphs will begin performing an improvised symphonic poem together, and during this performance, Ciaccona is immune to interruptions, gains 50% damage reduction, and enters into a recital. Ciaccona will then start casting waves around her, and once the circle indicators around Ciaccona appear, pressing A or D or one of the inputs on screen will generate a symphonic poem tonic. This will recover some concerto energy. Depending on what button you pressed, this will also cause Ciaccona to apply a different status effect. Pressing A or the yellow button will apply 1 stack of Spectrofrazzle, and pressing D or the green input will apply 1 stack of Aero Erosion. Now, when you swap off of Ciaccona during her symphonic poem, her recital will not end, and instead it automatically generates a symphonic poem tonic matching your last input. In other words, when you swap off, if you pressed A for Spectrofrazzle, you'll continually apply it, but likewise, if you press D, you'll instead apply Aero Erosion on the enemy instead. In the case that you were to swap off Ciaccona right after using her ultimate, without waiting for the wave mechanic, her symphonic poem tonic will only trigger erosion stacks. Finally though, pressing Resonance Liberation again or swapping back to Ciaccona will end her ultimate early. Now let's move on to Ciaccona's forte, Symphony of Wind and Verse. When casting her intro skill or performing her 4th normal attack, Ciaccona will generate 1 stack of musical essence. This is valuable because once at 3 stacks, she uses her heavy attack to cast quadruple downbeat, consuming all musical essences, dealing arrow damage, pulling all enemies together, and also applying 1 stack of Aero Erosion. Once we start talking about Ciaccona's intro skill, however, her rotation and combo will make a lot more sense. After casting her intro skill, she will then deal arrow damage and apply 1 stack of Aero Erosion, and additionally, her intro skill will then allow her to begin her normal attack combo from the 3rd hit. This is helpful of course since it accelerates both her forte buildup and self-generation, so make sure to keep this in mind. Ciaccona's outro skill is actually what makes her an incredible Aero Erosion support though, and this is because after casting Ciaccona's outro skill, she amplifies the Aero Erosion damage dealt to enemies close to the active resonator by 100% for 30 seconds. To keep things simple though, this just means that all enemies near your character will take much more Aero Erosion damage for 30 seconds. Regarding teams at the moment, there unfortunately aren't that many DPS units that can fully capitalize on Ciaccona's kit, and since Erosion is a newly introduced mechanic with the Rena Sita update, the only character currently able to benefit from her erosion damage amplification is Aero Rover, and this is honestly more of a support focused unit rather than a main DPS. However, Ciaccona does still provide substantial team-wide arrow damage bonuses Gian and Alto can also effectively use. This makes her a strong support option for characters who focus on arrow-based units, but if we look ahead, Kartathea has been revealed as the next unit following Ciaccona's banner, and given that she's been shown to be an arrow sword user with gameplay that suggests a high impact DPS playstyle, things look pretty interesting for her especially. Now, while full details of her kit have not yet been released, it is reasonable to assume that she may interact with the Aero Erosion mechanic, especially given that other characters recently released also currently do. If that's the case, Ciaccona could potentially be an ideal support for Kartathea, enhancing her arrow damage and fitting into a future arrow-centric team composition. I did still want to give you an idea of how Ciaccona's teams would look like, and so we could start with the following. First, we can use a main DPS like Gian, Alto, or the future Kartathea, and following this, a pairing of Ciaccona and a sustain unit that could include characters like Verena or Shorekeeper will work, since both these units are extremely versatile and fit on most if not all team compositions in the game. If these characters aren't available, however, other options could include Aero Rover or Zhang Xin. Now, while these aren't the best or most synergistic resonators with Ciaccona, it is still worth noting that they do benefit from Ciaccona's kit specifically. Despite this though, they certainly do not provide nearly as much value for the team when compared to Verena or Shorekeeper. As for those who love Cantarella, I'm sorry to say that she will likely not work too well with Ciaccona's teams compared to all the other options, and truthfully, from the bottom of my heart, I do empathize with you all. It's quite a shame. Before we move forward, I do want to mention that other combinations of main DPS have been tested as well, with characters like Zany or even Phoebe providing noteworthy but not insane results. Now, before I get too far ahead of myself though, I do want to mention that most of these results were weaker than current meta or powerful teams as of 2.3, so do with this information what you will. Ciaccona's signature pistol, Woodland Aria, was created just for her, and of course the base 500 attack, crazy 36% crit chance, 12% attack, 24% arrow damage bonus, and reducing the enemy's arrow resistance by 10% when hit by Aero Erosion makes this weapon insane and also a mouthful. Overall though, this is definitely one of the craziest stat stick weapons we've seen thus far, but unfortunately this won't nearly help you as much currently since the buffs are pretty element specific and not many other characters will need a specific weapon like this. Now, while this is by far her best option, she does have a few free to play choices too. This includes the standard banner pistol Static Mist, which does have a decent base of 587 attack, 24.3% crit chance, and 12.8 energy regen. But in addition to this weapon also provides a 10% attack buff for the next resonator swap to after casting an outro skill. Now, to be clear, this weapon does fit Ciaccona well enough to the point that her signature isn't nearly as appealing given Kartathea's recent announcement and the bloodbath of everyone's wallets following Zany's recent release. But if you were curious about 4-star options, there unfortunately really aren't any amazing ones, since with Wuthering Waves, there just aren't that many good 4-star options in general. Now, because of that, feel free to use any previously leveled weapons or any attack percent based pistols instead. But now let's talk about her echo sets. For Ciaccona, her best option is definitely Gusts of Welkin Sonata, and this is because it provides the team with a 15% arrow damage bonus. But in addition to this, the resonator who triggered Aero Erosion specifically to activate this echo set effect will also gain an additional 15% arrow damage for themselves. Now, based on Ciaccona's kit, it is fair to assume that she can be run as a character whose main objective is to support your main DPS, and as a result, using Moonlit Clouds is therefore a worthwhile or potential option for both the team DPS increase it provides and the energy regen that she would otherwise gain. Now, despite this, both options are still viable, and your choice for Ciaccona will definitely depend more on whether you want to farm a new set for Ciaccona or strip your Sanhua or Mortefi for the 20th time. As for main stats, your forecast should be Remnant's Fleur-de-Lis with crit damage, since both her signature and Static Mist give crit chance, but for those without either, using crit chance as a main stat is still fine. For 3 costs, Ciaccona will want double elemental based echoes, and for her 1 cost, double attack will definitely be your goal. Substat wise, you will be looking for attack percent, crit rate, and crit damage, but in addition to this, energy regen and resonance liberation damage bonus will also be helpful for Ciaccona's kit. With all this out of the way, a good stat line to aim for is something around 2200 attack, 70 crit chance, 260 crit damage, and around 120 to 130 energy regen. Now that we understand Ciaccona's abilities, possible teammates, weapon options, and build, let's now get into her combo and rotation. Her most common and decently effective combo starts with the following. Begin with your support / sustainer's opening rotation, so they perform their outro skill, then cast Ciaccona's intro skill, applying 1 stack of erosion, generating 1 forte stack, and letting Ciaccona start her normal attack combo on the 3rd hit, then follow this by finishing her normal attack chain, triggering a 2nd erosion stack and gaining a 2nd forte stack. This will also then generate an ensemble self, but that's not where things end. Next, Next, use her resonance skill, triggering a third erosion stack, generating another sylph and allowing Ciaccona to start her normal attack combo on the second hit, and then finish said normal attack combo for a third stack of her forte and generating a third sylph that will then replace the first one. Finally, use your heavy attack, consuming all 3 forte stacks, grouping enemies, and applying a 4th erosion stack. But once this has been completed, you'll then use her ultimate to fill her concerto energy, allowing you to then outro skill back onto your DPS. This overall will yield massive buffs to the team and apply significant damage through the Aero Erosion stacked on the enemies, but this will likely be the go-to combo for most players as it fully utilizes Ciaccona's on-field abilities, and it also does take advantage of her forte bar, generates both sylphs, applies 4 stacks of erosion, and builds up her concerto energy as quickly as possible. Next, however, let's talk resonance chains. Now, Ciaccona's first resonance chain grants her interruption immunity on her skill resonance and a 35% attack buff for 10 seconds whenever she uses a normal attack. For her second resonance chain, this grants her team an extra 40% arrow damage bonus during Ciaccona's ult, but just between these first 2 resonance chains, I do want to say that the added damage increases are significant. This is added damage that will be noticeable assuming you have it, but as always, since this isn't necessarily a functional or gameplay mechanic change, this value may feel less worth it than one that significantly changes a gameplay rotation or feature in a Resonator's kit. Additionally, since there doesn't appear to be a perfect DPS that synergizes with Ciaccona currently, this may also feel a bit worse as the added arrow damage bonus does buff a few of the characters in the cast, but overall this is not nearly as versatile as you might think it is. For the third resonance chain, Ciaccona's 4th basic will now generate an extra stack of her forte, and additionally her resonance skill will now have an extra charge. Now, unlike the first or second chains, this value can definitely feel dependent on the rotation or playstyle, but as it stands currently, having additional stacks of forte and extra charges on her resonance skill can add quality of life to her kit and make her overall feel more comfortable to play. For her 4th resonance chain, Ciaccona's heavy attack, quadruple downbeat, and Ciaccona's resonance liberation will now both ignore 45% of the target's defense as well. Now, clearly these are both noteworthy additions to Ciaccona's value, but as we move to Ciaccona's 5th resonance, this is a personal 40% damage bonus to resonance liberation damage, and additionally resonators within and around the area of her ultimate will take 30% less damage. Truthfully, the 5th resonance chain is where a lot of these changes start to feel more Ciaccona based, as it no longer exclusively buffs her allies, but as we start talking about our 6th resonance chain, this is even more evident. While in solo concert, Ciaccona or her ensemble sylph will now deal 220% of Ciaccona's attack to nearby targets as arrow damage, and this is considered resonance liberation damage, which is nice again given all the buffs that are affected specifically by this. But as we move from this, let's now finally answer the most important question of all. Should you pull for Ciaccona? Now, currently as of version 2.3, the only relevant character that can make use of Ciaccona at all is Gian, Alto, and potentially Phoebe or Zany, but most of these characters have supportive cast members like Mortefi or other buffers that just do her job but better. Now, despite this, Ciaccona does look to be the premier Aero Erosion support for the foreseeable future, so if you're looking to buff any future Aero Erosion DPS, I would definitely pick her up. That said, the version 2.4 livestream has been announced for the 30th of May, so it's also definitely reasonable to wait and see what's announced then. But with that, guys, that's all I have for today's guide. Thank you again for watching. If you enjoyed today's content, feel free to like, comment, turn on the notification bell, and subscribe. I'll see you all in the next one though. Stay safe, stay healthy. Good night.